So as many people will know, I actually attended Manchester Crown Court and witnessed firsthand Lucy Letby take the stand for around 30 to 40 hours of her cross-examination in court. In this video, I'm going to be sharing my own experience and some of my own thoughts regarding the trial itself. One of the first things that stands out to me regarding Lucy Letby's testimony is when she was being questioned about the insulin case. And I remember sitting there and I'm just listening to all this, information coming in, and Nicholas Johnson is saying to Lucy Letby, so, are you basically, are you disputing the fact that this child was poisoned with insulin? And Lucy Letby was like, no, I'm not disputing that at all, no. And it was just the way that she came across. It was not what you would expect at all. At all. Now, Mr. Johnson was going through different methods in how this insulin could have found its way into the TPN bag. So he's talking about, and bearing in mind I'm paraphrasing here, so I'm going from memory. But he's talking about, okay, so maybe you just, you take the wrapper off and you unscrew the lid and, you could put a syringe in here. And she's very quiet, listening along. And he said, well, would you agree? And she said, well, I've got no idea because I've never done that before, so I wouldn't know. And it was just the way that she came across was so convincing to me at that time. Bearing in mind, we're going to go through the timeline here, but at that time, it just felt so convincing. And I was sat there and I was thinking to myself, it sounds like I'm listening to someone who's telling the truth. There wasn't any of this sort of over-explaining or, well, I don't know what's happened. I don't know what's going on. None of that. It wasn't over the top. It wasn't seeking or searching for answers within herself. None of that. Just like almost as if she was just as confused as Mr. Johnson was. And that is genuinely, from my point of view, how it came across in that moment. Now, let me touch upon Lucy Letby's demeanour in general, because I know a lot of people out there will say, well, how did she sound? How did she look? How was she sitting? What was she wearing? All of that sort of stuff. What stood out to me was how Lucy Letby was sat in her chair. Now, this might sound a little bit strange, but she was sat very upright, but she wasn't leaning on anything. It wasn't as if her nose was in the air and she was looking superior to everybody else. Nothing like that at all. Very, very straight, sat very straight in her chair, back super straight. Her hair was darker than what you see in the mugshot, darker and longer, probably down to shoulder length and very straight. Her face looks a little bit older than the mugshot photograph, a little bit more drawn. Everything just looks a bit more drawn. Her face, just a constant, is miserable the right word? A constant miserable look on her face, a little bit terrified, I don't know, sort of wide-eyed, downward turned smile, just a unhappy, miserable expression, basically. And her, demeanour in terms of how she spoke, very softly spoken, very clinical, very clinical. What I want to play you is the very short clip of her police interview. Now, this is the closest you're going to get to what she sounded like in court. Very clinical, very composed. I think composed is the right word. There was only one occasion where I saw Lucy Letby lose her temper, and that is probably the moment that sticks in my mind most regarding all of the testimony that I witnessed in court firsthand. But I will get to that later on. But very clinical, softly spoken, and I'm just going to play this clip for you now. Take a close look at this. Just imagine all of the evidence that we've heard thus far in the trial being spoken and told in this tone of voice and in this manner.
They told me that there had been a lot more deaths and that I'd been linked to somebody that was there for a lot of them.
Did you have any concerns that there was a rise in the mortality rate?
Yes.
Okay, so tell me about that. What concerns did you have?
I think we'd all just noticed as a team in general, the nursing staff, that this was a rise compared to previous years.
Now, for many people who have followed this case for any real length of time, a lot of people have the opinion of, well, clearly she's guilty. What about all the times in court where she said, I can't recall, or I don't know, or just being completely silent and refusing to answer questions? I mean, surely The evidence is there. Why has it taken so long to convict her? What I will say is that unless you have sat there and witnessed her firsthand, heard her speak, seen her demeanour, seen the way that she looks, the way that she delivers her sentences, you're kind of making an assessment with only half of the information. The way that things are written does not necessarily tell you how they've been delivered by that person. I mean, everybody who was in that room watching what I was watching was most likely making an assessment themselves on whether this person was telling the truth or a complete pack of lies. And what I will say is that she came across a lot better in court than what was reported via the live reporting or the newspaper articles that came out. You know, when it said words such as "I can't recall" or "I can't answer that," it didn't really do it justice in terms of how she was saying that in court. She fought her corner in some instances, I say that again, some instances, quite well. And I remember leaving there on the first day, and this is something that has stuck with me since I attended. You know, the first time that I remember driving back, I got stuck in traffic. It took me like 5 hours to get home. And on the way home, I just felt really confused because I'd gone there thinking to myself, this person's guilty. No shadow of a doubt, she's guilty, 100%. And then on the way back, driving home, I just had this very confused feeling, a very confused state of mind. I still remember going to bed that night and being wide awake, looking at the ceiling, thinking to myself, how can she be innocent? How can she be innocent? What have I missed here? What have other people missed? How can she be innocent? And this really did get to me for at least a couple of days because of the way she came across in court. As I say, very convincing. Not so much in terms of what she said, but how she said it. I'll repeat that again. Not what she said, but how she said it, how it was delivered. If you need to remember, go back and take a look again at that short clip and just imagine all of the evidence that we've heard in that sort of level, monotone, matter-of-fact, clinical delivery. Imagine everything that we've heard in that style of delivery. Now, I plan on making some separate videos outlining my experience having been, present for Lucy Letby's cross-examination, or at least a large part of it. So this isn't going to be the only video, with my experience, but I just wanted to finish this particular part by saying that the last day that I attended was Lucy Letby's final day under cross-examination. Now, I was quite torn about whether to attend this because I'd been there on countless occasions. There was even, I think, 3 or 4 occasions when I attended, and I'd done the best part of a 9 or 10 hour drive just to be told that a jury member was sick or something had happened and the trial wasn't going ahead. But I thought to myself, I've got to be there for the last day of the cross-examination. I have to see what takes place and see her demeanour. And not only that, it was really because I'd come back from there on another occasion thinking to myself, I feel quite torn about this now. I'd gone there thinking that this person's completely guilty. I've got no doubt at all. And I've come home with more questions than I have answers. So I needed to get there for that last day of her cross-examination. So anyway, I arrived there super early for the last day. I'm literally the first person upstairs. I'm the first person sitting on the blue seats waiting for the doors to open and to be let in, basically. And something else that I didn't mention is that when you're sat up there on that first floor waiting for the proceedings to take place, Lucy Letby's parents would be sat the other side of those blue seats. So there'll be like a massive line along one side of the wall, and on the opposite side of the wall there'll be another line. And Lucy Letby's parents were there with one of Lucy Letby's friends, by all accounts. So anyway, the final day takes place, and I'm going to try and remember what stood out to me in particular. Now, bearing in mind I'm going there, and I'm actually, on this occasion, I'm thinking to myself, okay, just remove how she speaks, remove the tonality in which she's speaking, and just focus on what she is saying. That's really what my goal was. I wanted to try and remove all of the noise and just listen to what was coming out of her mouth. And there was one occasion that stands out to me in particular, more than anything else. And it was the only time that I saw Lucy Letby's demeanour slip or change in any way, shape or form. And that was when Mr. Johnson starts asking her questions about one of the mothers in this case. And I'm not going to go into all of the details because obviously the children's names are mentioned in full, the parents' names are mentioned. And he says, oh, this child's mother's got a very strange first name, hasn't she? And she went, yes. And he said, very strange first name. It's quite difficult to spell, isn't it? Quite difficult. And she goes, yeah. So it's a very difficult name. And Lucy Letby, as he was halfway, she went, yes. It was like she said that and like glanced to him like a sort of an evil. Oh, God, I don't want to bloody over exaggerate this. She sort of, shot him a glance out the corner of her eye. So, just to replay that again, he was saying, "Oh, she's got a strange first name, hasn't she? A very strange first name." And Lucy said, "Yeah, very strange. Yes." And it was bizarre. It was like for a split second, she was somebody else, and that's the only way that I can explain it. Bearing in mind, I'm watching this intently. I'm watching for everything. I'm trying to take every piece of information I can in. And yeah, just this sharp yes. And this shooting him a glance out the corner of her eye. And I think she knew where he was going with this. And I have to say, before I continue, and I've been wanting to say this, but I just don't really know how to phrase this. Nicholas Johnson, the prosecution barrister, he was incredible, I have to say. He was the way that they weave these stories, and you can almost sort of visualise what's taking place in your own mind. It's really bizarre. And I thought, where the hell is he going with this story? So anyway, Nicholas Johnson sets off down this path regarding one of the mother's first names. And he's, saying it's a very complex name, isn't it? It's quite a difficult name to spell, that is, yeah. And then he said, why don't you try and spell it for us? And she said, well, I don't think I could do that now. He said, oh, come on, you've got a good memory. I want you to try, please. There was a little bit of a silence, and then she said, T, H, I, U, G. Obviously, I'm just making up letters here. E. Then she stops. No, that's not right, he said. You were reading the name from the handover sheet, weren't you? Found under your bed. And she went, no, I wasn't. And it was, I tell you what, because I thought to myself, where is he going with this? And you could sort of picture it in your mind because she had searched for this name on Facebook. And clearly she could spell it on Facebook because she was reading it from the handover sheet. And I can't remember exactly, but he said 1, 2, 3. It was either 3 or 7. There was either 3 sheets or 7 sheets that had his mother's first name on them. And he said, we've got 3 sheets here, all with that first name on it. And what he was alluding to was the fact that you can't spell it now, can you? But yet somehow you managed to search for her on Facebook. And you managed to search for her on Facebook because you were reading her name from the handover sheet found under your bed. And it was the way that he weaved this story into life. And I remember coming out there on the lunch break, just thinking, it was just a real moment of, you could actually picture her doing what he was saying. Because as I say, at first I thought, where the hell is he going with this? And I think that was the reason why she snapped at him. And when he was saying, it's a complex name, isn't it? And in the end she went, yes, literally like that, a split second. And I think she knew that he was going to ask her to spell that name and she couldn't, yet she had searched for that person's name on Facebook and spelt it correctly. And yeah, it was that was one of the moments, as I say, that stood out to me most throughout the time that I was present there in court. It was around this time period that I started to realise I could actually be looking and witnessing here a very accomplished liar. Because when I paid really close attention to what she was saying, and not so much what she was saying, but what she failed to say, I started to really think to myself, you're a liar. You are a liar. And you are guilty. It's genuinely what went through my head in that moment. And the reason for that, one of the biggest reasons, it might sound, a little bit incidental, but I really do remember this point in the conversation or the discussion with Mr. Johnson. And at this point in time, Lucy Letby knew, she knew for a fact that something was very, very wrong. She had had the phone call to say, don't come into work tonight, and she was panicking. Now, even if she's innocent, she was panicking. That can't be disputed because it shows in her text messages, and she even admitted in court that she was having a meltdown. So she's exchanging text messages with this doctor, Dr. A, as he was called. And you can tell that she is panicking. She is concerned. She's worried. And you can almost put yourself in her position at this point in time thinking, oh my God, it's all, the world's imploding, you know, everything's coming down on top of her. And Nicholas Johnson says to her, so what were you thinking in those 12 minutes? Now, just to give a little bit of context about this, she's exchanging text messages with Dr. A, and there's a 12-minute gap. She goes completely silent during this text conversation for around 12 minutes. And Nicholas Johnson said, what were you doing in those 12 minutes? And she said, I can't answer that. And I thought to myself, you knew, you would know for a fact, 100%, what you were doing in that moment. You would know what you felt, what you were feeling, what was going on in your mind, because this was the point, the absolute pinnacle of when she knew that something was very, very wrong and suspicions were coming down onto her. She knew for a fact at this point in time that everything had become incredibly real. So I didn't buy in for 1 second that she couldn't recall how she felt in that moment. If this was someone who was completely innocent, I would have expected something along the lines of, yeah, I was deeply upset. Of course I was. I was thinking to myself, you know, I was thinking about all of the cases, all of the tragedies that had happened in our unit over this past year, thinking to myself, had I done anything wrong? Is there anything here that I have done wrong? You know, that is what an innocent person would have said. They would have been looking for answers. They wouldn't be sitting there saying, oh, I can't recall that. I can't answer that. No, you didn't want to answer that. And that was that was when it really dawned on me. You don't want to answer because you knew you were panicking. You knew that they were onto you at that point. And even he said that. He said, you knew that they were onto you, didn't you? And she said, no. But I would bet anything that she can recall, even today, how she felt in those 12 minutes. When she wrote to the doctor, so after the 12 minutes, she then messaged the doctor back saying, sorry, that was rude. I'm having a meltdown plus. She would have known what she thought, what she felt, what she did in that 12-minute gap. I don't care if it's 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. This was the moment, and even Nicholas Johnson said it himself, this was a big moment in your life, wasn't it? And she said, no, not in the grand scheme of what's taken place since then, no. And trust me, it was a big moment in her life. This was the moment when she realised that something was very wrong, that they had suspicions about her. And I just didn't believe it for 1 second. The fact that she said, I can't answer that. To me, she didn't want to answer that because she knew that she was panicking and she was in a great deal of trouble. From there, my realisation just got even greater because we then started hearing about a Datix form. Now, Datix form is for like if you find faulty equipment, you would fill out a form, make a note of it, and this, that, and the other. Basically, that's what they have in hospitals. So a few days after these text messages, she then fills out a Datix form saying that a bung is missing off of one of the lines. So part of the medical equipment was faulty, and the fact that this bung was missing could cause an accidental air embolus. And then I thought to myself, it doesn't look good, does it? It doesn't look good that you're now creating a narrative around what they're later going to find if they look into these cases, that a number of these poor children have been injected with air. And you're making an excuse that part of this medical equipment could cause such an event. It really dawned on me then that this is a very skilled and accomplished liar. And people will have their own opinions on whether she's guilty, whether she's innocent. Just bear in mind that this is just my own personal opinion. I'm not here to convince anybody. I'm not here to drill it home that she's guilty or innocent or this, that and the other. I'm just sharing my own opinion. Anyway, do leave your own thoughts and theories down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this style of video, please let me know by leaving a comment. And as always, I look forward to seeing you all again for the next video. Take care. Cheers.